Hello, I'm Chanel, and today we are taking a look back at my 23 most anticipated reads for 2023. So let's see how many of them were actually bangers and how many were duds. I'm just going to go in random order. So we've got Ghost Music. So Ghost Music was about a woman named Song who starts to receive mystery packages of mushrooms delivered to her, and she is a piano teacher. So this was a litfic book with some magical realism. This one, pretty much the cover drew me in. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I ended up being very mid, so I rated it 3 stars. It just wasn't really for me. It was okay, but I didn't particularly love it or like it, and I don't even remember really how the story went at this point. So that's what happens with 3-star books. They definitely don't stay in my memory because there's not enough of a emotional connection to them. So the next book was The Librarian of Crooked Lane. And this was a book in where there is magic, there are magicians, people are looking into the disappearance of magic made art. And man, this was dull. I gave this 2.5 stars. And my review, I'm just going to read my review for this one. I said, this was so incredibly boring. Listening to someone snore all night would be far more entertaining. The only mystery they solve is the one nobody cares about. So yeah, that's how I felt about that. The next book that I chose was Braiding Sweetgrass. So I always like to do at least one nonfiction in there, and this has so much praise, and I understand why. I did personally end up DNFing this, and I just think it was the wrong time for me. I think I have to be in a very particular mood to read something that's very languid and slow and very rich kind of writing. I remember I did enjoy it, but it is very meandering. The author will start talking about one thing, and then that leads to this other thing, and then some other thing, and then all of a sudden you're talking about blueberries on a bush. It's very kind of like that. And at that time I was like, I just don't have the patience and the time to sit and digest this. I think it's one of those books you probably do have to own so you can go back and forward to it. It's not one that I could just continue to read until I finish it. So that was, I think it's just a case of me, not the book's fault. Some people really love it. That was Braiding Sweetgrass. And then I read Fruiting Bodies. Once again, the cover got me. This was a collection of very, very uncomfortable short stories, a lot of like body horror in there. For instance, one woman had mushrooms growing from her body, and it's just, oof. But I did give it 3.5 stars overall. There were some that I really liked. I remember there was a sort of Fae-esque tale about a woman going to a game and people were betting things like, I am betting the taste of strawberries. So if you lose the taste of strawberries. It was very interesting to see what they were betting, what they were willing to lose. So that was definitely my favorite story out of that one. But overall, yeah, for a short story collection, it was pretty good. And then it's Happy Place by Emily Henry. And out of all of the Emily Henry books I've read, this was definitely my least favorite. I gave it 3.5 stars in the end. This couple who split up for 5 months, didn't tell anybody about it, and then have to pretend they're together. But the reason that they're separated, they just don't communicate. They just don't talk to each other. These are grown adults and they can't say how they're feeling to each other and what they need from the relationship. I can't read books about that in this day and age. This very communication heavy day and age where we're all most of us are going to therapy and doing our shadow work and working through our traumas and learning to communicate our needs and our wants. I can't read about that. Like, it was just so unbelievably frustrating. And the friendship group itself just seemed really toxic. I wasn't feeling the found family vibes within that friendship group, to be honest. But yeah, the biggest thing was that they didn't even talk about the breakup. They just kind of broke up, but it wasn't even a proper breakup. And I'm like, you're telling me just a text and that's it? This engagement, because they weren't just dating, they were engaged, is off? Like, in what world are you not having a proper breakup where you're saying what you need to say and you're seeing each other face to face? Like, it was a bit ridiculous. And then we have the rom-com agenda. And I think this was about, I think they were trying to give the guy a makeover in some way. I think that's what it was about. And I DNF'd it. I just didn't like it at all. I felt like all the women were really picking on this guy. Yeah, I can't quite remember. I think it was the one where the chick worked at also like 3 stores next door to each other. I work here and here and here. And I just wasn't feeling the chemistry. I wasn't feeling the vibe, and it wasn't doing anything for me. So I did DNF that one. And then I read Games for Dead Girls. So this was a horror, and young women go missing. I gave this 2 stars. So I didn't write a review, so I don't quite remember exactly what it was about this book that I didn't like. I kind of remember the story, but it just didn't have anything fantastic about it. And I was so disappointed because I love this author's fantasy works. But yeah, this horror just wasn't it for me. We are not doing well. So out of my most anticipated reads thus far, the highest rating was a 3.5. And it's just making me feel like, man, really, maybe I just don't know how to pick books that I like. But let's keep going. I'm sure at least one of these most anticipated was above a 4-star. Hey, Sylvie Sky. Okay, we have A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. And finally, this was a 4-star read for me. So I did enjoy this. This was a horror book about a woman who goes home and some weird shit is going on. In that house, there's a lot of stuff on insects because that's her job. She works with insects. There's a lot of play on roses because that is the dead grandmother's favorite thing. I remember this was very slow to get into, but then all of a sudden things kicked off and shit got hella crazy. And you've got really creepy, multi-dimensional kind of beings and gross stuff going on. The best part of this was the vultures for me. I loved the vultures. They were just so adorable and it makes you want to get a pet vulture. So that was my favorite part of the book. There were definitely witchy vibes and a bit like spooky kind of demon vibes and necromancy kind of in play. So overall, it was a 4-star book for me. And yay, finally one book kind of paid off. And then I chose A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon because I thought this would be a bit of fun, a bit of a paranormal romance. And I ended up giving this 3 stars. And I did say that it was basically a cute bit of fluff. You have a soft boy demon and a clumsy witch and a little bit of spice. It was a very kind of not so serious, light-hearted book. And yeah, ended up being a 3 stars, so that was that one. And then I chose The Secret Service of Tea and Treasons. This was the 3rd installment in a series that I'd actually liked. The second book was my absolute favorite. I had given that a 5-star. This one I gave 3. So this was not it for me because in this book where you have witches and pirates who hate each other and always doing things to kill each other, this one focuses on the human government Secret Service agents that are placed in the witches and the pirates domains, and to have 2 very straight-laced stiffed humans as a love interest doesn't do it for me. I can't have 2 stiffs. If there's someone who's very conservative and prudish and proper, then I need the other love interest to be a rake, to be seductive, to be flirty. I can't have 2 cardboard people. Just doesn't work for me. I don't feel the passion and the fire because they're holding everything inside. So I need someone to melt the frosty exterior when they're both icy poles. I'm like, no, it doesn't work. So I didn't love this one. This was the most, and it was also, this one just felt so over the top. I wonder if I still would actually like the second book because just the hijinks and everything that the pirates and witches were doing, I'm just like, oh my God, tone it down. Like, this is too crazy. This is too extra. So I'm not sure about this. I wouldn't recommend the series as a whole, to be honest with you. And I'm side-eyeing my 5-star of the second book because I'm like, would I still rate it as highly? I don't know. And then I chose a graphic novel called Unfamiliar, and this is about a witch, and it said it had themes of like found family and the power of friendships and finding oneself. Unfortunately, it still hasn't come into the library. So I did request that they purchase this. It still hasn't come. So I haven't gotten to read it. And I think I'll probably be putting it on my most anticipated reads of 2024 next year. And you're probably thinking, Chanel, why would you do that when so far this list has been really unsatisfactory? You did not choose many good books for yourself. Because I still think it looks cute. It's still going to come into the library at some point. So yeah, I just haven't had a chance to read it yet. But I'm still hopeful this might be a good one. Hello, I'm back. You'll have to excuse the sweatiness. It's the end of the day and my kids are home from school, so I apologize for the external ambient noise, but let's continue where I left off. So next up we have God Killer, and I gave this 3.5 stars. I think the cover is gorgeous for this one. That's definitely why I put it on there. I remember this was slow to get into. It was kind of violent, but I really appreciated the representation that was in it. So there was disability rep and there was queer rep. But I remember thinking too that the romance felt forced. It didn't really feel natural. But I'm intrigued enough to continue the series. So I was interested enough to continue on with it. So I will read the sequel. But yeah, 3.5 stars is pretty decent. But I think I did have higher hopes for this one in particular. And then I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. So once again, gorgeous cover. Cover got me. I am a shallow girly in that respect. I will be sucked in by a beautiful cover. I rated this one also 3.5 stars. So with this one, once again, pacing was a bit weird. It was slow to begin with, and then it really kicked off. The main character definitely was neurodivergent coded. The slow burn romance was nice, but I found the main character very cold, very unlikable. Like I would have preferred to read the book in her love interest's point of view. He was cool, he was interesting. But yeah, this was pretty much boring, and then last 25%, what the hell is going on? Oh my God, everything's happening. Crazy town. I'm undecided on whether or not I'm going to read the next one. It just depends on when it comes out and what I've already got on my TBR at that time. If it's a bit of a slow month and there's not many books out, I probably will read it. But if I've got so many other books that I'm interested in, I probably might give it a pass. But I'm like this with the second. Symphony for a Deadly Throne, it's hard to say. This was the third in the Musai series. I liked the first book, like the second book less. This one I DNF'd. I didn't even care to finish it to see what happened. Didn't even read ahead. That's how little interest I had. The main character was just very, once again, unlikable. She was miserable and she was putting herself in a situation where she was miserable. She didn't have to be, and therefore you just were very frustrated with it. It also had the childhood lovers trope, which is just does nothing for me whatsoever. So yeah, this one I DNF'd. Then I read Serpent and the Wings of Night. This went absolutely viral. I loved her other series, Daughter of No Worlds, I think it was. But I think the first book was like the phenomenal one in that, and then it went downhill. And I find that with this author, the first book is always the first one. So anyway, this one, fantasy romance about vampires. Apologies if I haven't been saying what the books are about in the other one. I think I forgot. This one I gave 4 stars. So this is so far the highest rated book I think on here, along with House with Good Bones. This one, I liked the romance. It's just a typical fantasy book. It wasn't spectacular, it wasn't amazing, but it was an enjoyable time. And I did continue to read on to the second one and then decided I'm not going to read anymore in that particular series, although I have read her novellas in between, and I actually prefer the novellas to the series. And then I read Raven Unveiled, which was the third in a series. Grace Draven in general is one of my favorite fantasy romance authors. She does things a bit differently, but she writes the spice and the build up so bloody well. This one I did not like. So I didn't finish it. Another DNF. I know. So this was disappointing, and I didn't write notes. So I don't know why. I am always writing notes now because of this reason, but past Chanel did not. So yeah, that was another DNF. Then I read Stolen Air. So I gave this 3 stars and I said it was mid. Oak just doesn't do it for me as a character. I also just can't get on board with someone who has hooves and goat legs. I can't not see that. Like, it's not human enough for me. I'm fine with having a tail or having some wings or having some fangs or some claws, but the hooves, yeah, I couldn't do it. And the same thing with his love interest. She has shark teeth, and it was just, I don't know. I didn't love the romance in it. A lot of stuff just didn't connect for me in this book, so I will not be continuing on. And then we have The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I realized I didn't say what the other book was about again. This one is a married couple, and the wife is hiding secrets, and she says to him, like, don't go looking into my past. And naturally he does, and it's supposed to be very gothic-y. Dude, I absolutely loathed this book. I ended up DNFing it. I found their relationship to be absolutely toxic. The writing was just way too flowery for me in a way that it just didn't have meaning. It was just elaborate for elaborate's sake. And yeah, I just viscerally did not like this book and DNF'd it. Then we have The Book That Wouldn't Burn. I gave this 3 stars. This was just, okay, very different, definitely very different, but you need to use all your brain power to understand this. This is one of those books that has multiple timelines and time travel and jumps and things like that, and it was too much. I didn't love the romance. It involves interspecies stuff, which was, I don't know, I just couldn't get on board with it for another reason. I know some people love stuff like that, like Avatar and thing, but if someone's too alien-like, it's too much for me. And like I said, I need them to have mostly human physicality. They can't be like a walking cat. I'm just not going to ship it. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was like well written, but it was so long and like I said, so intense. Witch King by Martha Wells. Oh my God, this one just sounded so amazing to me and I was so excited, and I got a really cool, I think, Illumicrate edition of this. And then when I read it, so disappointing. So it was 2.5 stars for me, and I wrote, my dudes, this was so boring and it makes me so sad. The premise was so interesting, but the execution was dry as hell. The back and forth between past and present drags the pacing, and the world building and magic system is incredibly dense. I couldn't connect to any of the morally grey characters. I only finished it because I had a pretty copy from Illumicrate. And that was that one. Really, if you ask me what it's about, I don't even remember anymore. It was just like, what is this? What is this? Then we have the book Venco, which is a play on the word coven. And I ended up giving this 3 stars. And this could have been good, but it wasn't. So I did like that there were queer, trans, elder, indigenous women. So I love the representation in this. It could have been an interesting magic system. There could have been some interesting world building and plot, but it wasn't executed well. The biggest thing was that the magic wasn't explained. So the magic in this world and with the witches wasn't explained. It was confusing. The bad guy named Jay Christos was just an over-the-top villain. It was laughable. I actually laughed every time they were mentioned. The whole motives and purpose of all the characters didn't make sense to me. And I think when you don't understand why people are doing things and for what reason, the whole book just falls apart. The romance was disgusting. I hated it. I hated the romance. Was not a fan. And the ending twist was just really dumb. And it, like I said, it made the whole book just seem pointless. Like, what? So that was so incredibly disappointing because once again, I had high hopes for it. It sounded cool. And the last book that I put on this list was The Rising Dawn, and it's the 4th book in a series out. My library hasn't got it. I didn't get my hands on it this year, so I'm going to have to wait until next year to do it. But as you can see, the best books from my anticipated reads were A House with Good Bones and Serpent and the Wings of Night. And if I had to pick which one I liked more, it was Serpent and the Wings of Night. So fantasy, romance, or romantasy ended up being my favorite out of those picks. But majority of those were flops. They really were. They were pretty much 3.5 and under, most of them being 3 and under. So I did not, so I've got Bluebell on my lap right now. She's so bloody adorable. Chose poorly. I chose poorly for me in terms of what books that I get enjoyment from. So going forward, I'm definitely not choosing 23 books next year. That was just too much pressure for me to make sure I got to them. I don't like having an extensive TBR. I like choosing as I go. So I like to keep it just for anything I hear someone else mention that I think is really phenomenal. Otherwise, I don't go looking for books to read. When I run out and I need a new book, then I go have a little browse and see what's recommended and choose from there because yeah, I just don't like the pressure of a massive TBR. I saw some booktuber the other day and they had 500 books on their TBR and I was just like, oh my God, that would crush me. That would crush me. So next year I'm choosing fewer books and I'm choosing majority fantasy. I'm going to still try and do 1 book from every genre and then the rest fantasy. I'm not choosing any sequels or trilogies. I'm choosing first books only. I think that's also a big thing. I don't want to put series in my most anticipated. But we'll see how we go. If I've improved at all in picking books, if you've just watched my last vlog, then you'll be like, have you? Have you improved, Chanel? I don't know, bro. At the moment, no. But then I think a few weeks ago, I had a really good week. So it comes and goes, ebbs and flows. But I will be doing my 2024 most anticipated book reads soon and let you know what they are. Until next time, stay wild, Star Child.